Dr. Sebi being, I don't want to say murdered, but does that scare you?
If I disappear, I need you to open an investigation.
That's right.
Okay? In modern medicine, it's a $110 billion industry.
Why would they want to get rid of that?
You know, going back to my days in the mortality space, I was working for these insurance companies predicting death. The sad thing was that I was not allowed to have any contact with the patient, and I was actually threatened with being criminally prosecuted if I reached out.
Gary, what age will you live to?
I'm on my way to 120. I'm probably going to try to push that to 140.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jason Derulo, a Sincere Show, and today we have Gary Brecka on, who is a biohacker, and he's going to make you superhuman. So you definitely want to check this one out. Gary, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited because I've been following you for some time now, and I am, to say the least, I'm a little obsessed with biohacking and how to live my best life.
Yep.
The best version of myself. How do I, keep my abs tight? How do I live a longer life? Those are the kinds of things that are constantly on my mind. Like, how do I stop this yo-yo? Gaining weight, losing weight, that's always on my mind. So I come back to your page all the time, and I'm constantly getting different information from you. But it's amazing to see you in the flesh.
Thank you.
To get to ask you questions, specific questions that I have today.
Fire away, man. I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, for sure. So my first thing is, what are your thoughts on fasting? Because I've been playing a little bit with the fasting. I've been seeing it. I feel like it's the newest topic. Everybody is on this fasting kick. But what do you think is the optimal amount of time, and your opinion on fasting and intermittent fasting, and the pros and cons for each?
Well, sure. If you look at fasting, first of all, it's amazing to me as I travel the world and I meet with some of the leading, anti-aging, biohacking, wellness, researchers, MDs and PhDs in the world of aging and optimal health. And what's happening now is, if I was to sort of summarize, what are the trends in biohacking, longevity, anti-aging, and I'm going to get to your question, is that we've come full circle and we're actually getting back to the basics. And fasting is no different. Fasting has been around since the dawn of time. Every religion in the world fasts. The Buddhists fast, the Muslims fast, the Jews fast, the Christians fast. And they fast for all kinds of reasons, but the majority of them were spiritual and health-related reasons. And so fasting's not a new concept. It's just that modern medicine has now caught up to it and realized that we were onto something thousands and thousands of years ago that we could harness when we didn't have pharmacies, we didn't have synthetics, we didn't have chemicals, we didn't have pharmaceuticals. We had to find ways to heal ourselves. We actually had to find ways to combat disease and pathology and heal ourselves. We had to find ways to put ourselves in a position where we were more receptive to spiritual messages. Right. And fasting was the greatest way that we did that. And so the body is such an amazing machine. It's very efficient. And when you deprive it of certain resources, it doesn't go without. It finds a way to get those resources, even if it has to go inside of itself and essentially consume itself in order to feed you. So during a fasted period, you may not be eating, but your body is. It's just eating you.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but so when we talk about what was, being done from the dawn of time, and obviously we talk about a lot of like African civilizations being into holistic healing and things like that. From some of the studies I've seen or research I've seen, life expectancy was lower then, but now with modern medicine, life expectancy is longer, right? So people live longer. They say men tend to live around 75 and women around 80 or something like that, a little bit longer than us. So with that being said, those things, do you think they actually worked back then, right? If people were dying, like let's take the medieval times, right? Like people were dying at 40 and that was like, he lived to 40, that was a great life, right? So how did we get from living to 40 being a great life, and then now we potentially could be able to live to 100 and then trying to reverse that with using some of those same old mechanisms? Like, what's the difference between doing it now?
Interestingly, I was a mortality expert for 20 years, so I studied mortality, and I was part of a clinical team that predicted mortality to the month. And I worked for big life insurance. And if we got 10 years of demographic data on you and 10 years of medical information on you. We could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month.
Okay.
So interestingly, the greatest leaps in life expectancy had nothing to do with modern medicine. The greatest leap in life expectancy ever, the greatest spike in life expectancy actually came from the invention of sewers and clean water sanitation.
Sewers.
And clean water sanitation. So when we were able to actually remove waste and get waste out of villages and actually able to have access to clean water, non-contaminated water, that was the greatest jump in life expectancy. There hasn't been a jump in life expectancy even remotely close to sanitation and clean water. And then if you look at modern medicine, I mean, right now, this year, and last year were the first time in measured history where life expectancy is beginning to go backwards.
I seen that too.
We are very good at extending lifespan. We are terrible at extending health span, right? So the fact that people are living longer, sicker lives, to me, doesn't mean that we're succeeding. The fact that we may be able to expand your health span would mean that we were succeeding. And back to your fasting question. So fasting was a resource before they really knew about microbes and bacteria and viruses. I mean, they knew that people got sick and they knew that you needed to cook meats and things like that. But we didn't really have a foray, a view into all these tiny little pathogens and bacteria. And if you had an open wound, you didn't clean it, you could get an infection and die. So sanitation and clean water was the biggest jump in life expectancy. But fasting still remains one of the great ways to harness the power of the human body, because if you start with prolonged fasting, and by prolonged fasting, I'll say a 24-hour, 3-day or longer fast. I just led 50,000 people through a 3-day water fast, December 19th, 20th, and 21st. I took 50,000 people and I wrote a water fasting guide, and we started on the 19th, we ended on the 21st, and we didn't eat for 3 days. We drank spring water,
Gary,
took electrolytes.
Can you tell me exactly what the water fast is? Because when I'm fasting, I'll have a tea with nothing in it, and then I'll have like a coffee with nothing in it. And
Perfect.
I'll have water. Is that part of the water fast?
Tea, water, coffee, electrolytes, things like Celtic sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, Baja salt that you can put into the water so your body gets the minerals, the basics that it needs. You abstain from supplementation, eating solid food, anything that would actually cause your liver to start to process, right? So the definition of breaking a fast is having the liver switch its mode from waste elimination, repair, detoxification, regeneration over to breaking down foods or breaking down toxins or trying to rid things from your bloodstream. So what basically happens in a fast, let's just take a 3-day water fast, for example. What I had people do was day one, we eased our way into it. So we took electrolytes on day one and amino acids. We used an amino acid called Perfect Amino. And then we had a bowl of bone broth at noon and a bowl of bone broth at 6 p.m. And the reason for that was the toughest part of a fast for the majority of people is day one. When that hunger hits, they just break their fast and they can't make it. So we eased our way into the fast. We had 2 liquid meals at noon and 6 p.m. And then days 2 and 3, we had nothing but spring water with a pinch of pink Himalayan sea salt or Baja salt in it. And what was astounding was the most common comment that I got from people that made it to day 3 was on the 3rd day they were no longer hungry. So what's fascinating is what's going on at a cellular level in the human body, right? So there are cells in everybody's body. They're affectionately called zombie cells, but in science, they're called senescent cells. So as we age, a larger and larger percentage of cells in our body are living, but they can no longer perform their function. You got red blood cells that can't carry oxygen. You got white blood cells that can't mount an immune defense. You got platelets that can't carry growth factors. And this is like having a company full of lazy employees. Right, just sucking on the payroll, not doing a damn thing. Right, you're smiling. You're like, I got one of those. Well, you would like to get their butt out of the seat and put somebody in their seat that will do its job. It's the same thing in the human body. We would like to consume those cells so the body replaces them with fully functioning cells.
Can those be cancerous cells as well?
They can be cancerous cells as well. All cancer has a common link. All cancer is when the cell changes its metabolism. It goes from essentially a healthy cell to a sick cell. Well, the immune system can identify these, and it will break them apart and turn them into amino acids, turn them into fuel. So when you're not eating for a prolonged period of time, your body turns on itself and it eats the weakest, most useless parts first. Right? You enter a state of ketosis.
Yeah.
So your body switches its energy source from glucose to now fat. So now you're starting to metabolize and mobilize fat. It also begins to eat these zombie cells. It breaks them apart, these senescent cells. It starts to clean the bloodstream and turn these useless cells into amino acids and fuel. And so people report incredible clarity and cognizance. Their short-term recall improves. Their energy level goes through the roof. Most people lose several pounds, 10, 15, 18 pounds, even over a 3-day period of time.
Yep.
And it's an incredible way to give your body a break and allow it to cleanse itself. I mean, I'm telling you, this God made this machine in such a fascinating way, and we've lost so much faith in humanity and mankind and the body's ability to heal itself. We've lost so much faith in the ability of this to heal this. That, a lot of the message that I try to get out is that you got an incredible pharmaceutical chemical factory right here, right inside of you. And if we would get back to a lot of the basics, clean food, clean whole foods. People are like, are you keto? Are you carnivore? Are you vegetarian, vegan? No, I eat clean whole foods.
Yeah.
The problem with most of the modern diet is not the food. It's the distance from the food to the table.
Gary, do you break though? Like, do you have days where you're like on Christmas? Did you have ice cream and
Yeah,
cake?
I broke down on Christmas. I go to my niece's birthday party. I'm not the guy that stands around and says, I'm not going to eat a slice of her birthday cake. It's what you do with 80% of your time, right? I rarely drink, but if I have a cocktail once in a great while, I have a high-end tequila. I just don't find it very interesting. I don't find that I need it personality-wise, but and it's also a poison. But it's not about being so strict that you can't live your life. It's about being conscious enough to say, you have two choices. You can either be the filter for your body, meaning you can filter things before you let them in, or you can let your body be the filter. And that's a very poor choice. And so what happens is, I make a lot of choices before I let things into the temple. And so I look at food two ways. It's either going to serve me or it's going to steal from me. And if it's going to steal from me, I just don't let it into the temple. It's amazing to me how many young entrepreneurs and very successful people that I will interview and I'll talk to, and I'll ask them things about their business or their career. Like, you can bring a young entrepreneur that's starting a business up on stage and say, hey, how much money did your company make last month? Oh, $622,000. What was your net profit? $148,000. How many employees do you have? 62. What's your revenue per employee? 41,000. And then you say, what's your blood sugar level? What's your hemoglobin A1C?
Blank.
Where's your testosterone?
Yeah.
Right? What's your vitamin D3 level? Blank. You mean you know more about your business than you know about the temple?
Wow.
And so
That's deep.
It's deep, but it's true, and hopefully it shifts people's perspective to say, listen, you don't need like a guru like me or some of these other biohackers to go and just get basic information on your body, right? Blood sugar, nutrient deficiencies, hormone balance, and begin to supplement your body for deficiency rather than the sake of supplementing. So if I go to most people's supplement cabinet, for example, and open it up, you see all kinds of stuff. There's a multivitamin in there, saw palmetto, St. John's wort, ashwagandha, some rare root, super greens, right? It's like creatine, whatever it is, pre-workout, post-workout. And you say, well, you shouldn't ask yourself whether or not this is a good supplement. You should ask yourself whether or not your body needs it. And in order to do that, you get information, basic blood test, basic genetic test. Now you got some information on the temple, and your body will tell you exactly what it's deficient in. You want to see magic happen in the human body, give it the raw material it needs to do its job.
When did you come passionate about this? You seem very passionate. I mean, obviously, you went to school and that was part of your education that I read online. But when did you feel the need to not only do it for yourself, but spread the good news to everybody?
So, I went to undergraduate for biology, and I went to graduate school for human biology. So I got a second degree in the biology of human beings. And then I went to work in the life insurance industry. And I worked in a very special division of life insurance, which was the mortality division. And the thing about life insurance and a lot of other financial services instruments, you would not believe how many tens of billions of dollars of financial services instruments every year are issued based on when people are going to die. Reverse mortgages, annuities, life insurance. This is all based on when people are going to die. If I'm a life insurance company and I'm about to put $25 million of risk on your life, only one thing matters. And so we got very, very good at looking at medical records and determining how many more months you had left on Earth.
Sure.
And I was brainwashed for years into just thinking that this was data, right? These were just spreadsheets. I had nothing to do with putting the person in this position. It wasn't my responsibility to get them out of this position. It was my responsibility to predict when they were going to die.
But a lot of insurance companies, they might turn a person down if they feel like, well, you're only going to be here another 2 years. Ain't no point to take that small amount for that high payout at the end of the 2 years, right?
100%. I mean, you want to know where where life insurance. I mean, you want to know where health trends are going. Watch what life insurance companies do. Look at the way that people are being table rated now for multiple vaccinations and multiple vaccine boosters.
Yeah,
you can say what you want, but if you got multiple boosters in your medical record, you are being table rated. They will charge you more for your life insurance policy.
Wow.
We knew about. We
That's
had
crazy.
data. Remember, life insurance companies have data that no other company has. No other financial services company has. No other university, no clinical study, not even the federal government. They know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for 370 million lives. And on the day you die, they also have all your medical records. They know your blood work. They know your genetics. So now they can triangulate that back into the medical record. So we knew. I mean, I will tell you that the database that I had access to for 20 years and that I used to predict mortality, if that database could see the light of day, it would permanently change the face of humanity. It would upend modern medicine in a way that would be catastrophic. And that's why it'll never see the light of day, because the truth about what's going on in humanity, chemicals, synthetics, pharmaceuticals, is in that database. We knew, for example, that take the African-American population. 85% of the African-American population is clinically deficient in vitamin D3. This is the single most important nutrient in the human body. When you're deficient in vitamin D3, your immune system's compromised. When you're deficient in vitamin D3, you have a hard time regulating blood sugar. When you're deficient in vitamin D3, you are succumbed to brittle bone disease like osteopenia, osteoporosis. You look at these communities and you see very high rates of type 2 diabetes, extraordinarily disproportionate rates of being affected from COVID.
Gary,
right?
how do you get D3?
Well, if you don't get it from sunlight, so D3 is the only vitamin that a human being makes on our own, right? There's hundreds of vitamins in your bloodstream right now. If I was to pull your blood, hundreds. Your body's only capable of making one. God made man, he made us with the ability to make one vitamin. So just think about how important that must be to human function, right? So 85%, 50% of the world's population is clinically deficient. A deficiency in vitamin D3 was the second leading cause of morbidity in COVID, right? But we didn't talk about giving the human body nutrients, right? We didn't tell people
about
to go
giving
get
them
on
the jab.
vitamin D3. Yeah, we talked about giving them the jab and then sitting on your couch waiting until you couldn't breathe anymore and go get ventilated at the emergency room.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I caught COVID, right? And it's crazy because it caught me, and at the beginning, there was not a lot of black people getting COVID at first. Well, at least on Black Twitter, it was like black people don't get COVID.
Black people can't get COVID.
Black people can't get COVID. It was like a thing, right?
On Black Twitter?
Yeah, on Black Twitter. So
we don't do this.
We don't get that.
We're not participating in that.
But I caught COVID, and I was one of the first, I guess, a celebrity or like influencer, people that people knew in the culture that caught it, and I was bedridden. I remember being in the hospital for a few days, and I got on my camera. I didn't know if it was going left or right, and basically told everybody, yo, listen, we getting it. It went viral, millions of views. People like, sincere got it is real. Like it was like a thing. And
you got it bad too.
I was in the hospital messed up. But when people ask me now, I say, I don't know if it was mentally, my anxiety was more, felt like I was going to die versus if I actually was. But at some point they tried to put me on a ventilator. And I had a black nurse. Shout out to the black nurses.
Yeah.
The day they was gonna put me on a ventilator, she whispered in my ear, "Don't get on the ventilator." She said, "Whatever you do, don't get on." Basically,
that woman saved your life.
She saved my life.
That woman saved your
Everybody who had got on a ventilator in that hospital.
I got goosebumps. You see my arms?
I'm with you.
You see them?
Crazy.
She said it. She said don't get on it. And everybody who had got on a ventilator in the hospital ended up dying in that particular hospital. And I remember just every other hour, like somebody would die, and it'd be just like a thing. People were very sad, obviously. And I said no, I don't. They were giving me what's the Trump? He was
Remdesivir.
No. It was something else.
Platelets, remdesivir.
It was whatever it was. It was the Canadian version. It was
Okay.
it's like a I'm sorry, not the Canadian, but the generic version of whatever Trump was touting at that time, saying to take that.
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin.
Oh, yeah,
It was the generic
Incredible
version,
for
right?
COVID.
So they gave me that, and a friend of mine, shout out to DJ Sky High, she sent me a care package with like elderberry and like all these different turmeric.
See?
and
Give the body
tea.
raw material.
And she
Let it
said,
defend itself.
shout out to DJ Sky High. She said, take this, right? So I didn't get on a ventilator. I started taking the natural things and immediately started feeling better. A few days later, I was released from the hospital, and I started doing some of the things I see you talking about. I would go hiking, get grounded, take my shoes off, be in the mountains, getting a lot of sun.
Yes.
Going down to the beach. And then I just got on a regimen of these vitamins that I would be taking daily, right? And I feel like, one, the nurse saved my life. Definitely my friend Sky High sending that regimen and with the stuff that she had, which I know you wanted to talk about, Dr. Sabi. It was
But before we get into that, y'all skipping. I mean, I'm dying to know what the fuck is going on with the ventilator. I mean,
The ventilator.
Because
I'm not sure.
I'm sure everybody at home is like, what is it about the ventilator that you couldn't get on?
Yeah, so the issues with the ventilator, not to cut you off, but the issue with the ventilator was, in New York City where they were especially hard hit with the pandemic. There were a couple of emergency rooms there that wrote ventilation protocols. They said, hey, this is the protocol that we're using on patients. And what they used was something that was they referred to as a hemorrhagic protocol. So when people come in and they've lost massive amounts of blood, gunshot wound, an arterial bleed, car accident, usually at the time that they end up in the emergency room, they're gravely injured, but their lungs are okay, right? They don't have pneumonia. They don't have fluid in the lungs. They don't have inflammation in the lungs. They don't have a cytokine storm going on in the lung tissue at that time. So you can actually use high amounts of pressure, and you can push air. You can force air into the bloodstream.
Yeah, it helps you breathe.
And it helps you breathe, right? And if you've lost a lot of blood or you had an artery severed or something like that, this could save your life. But you use that same protocol on somebody who actually has damaged lungs. You see, COVID was a respiratory virus, right? So it infected mainly the lungs.
Yeah, because I had everything was in my lungs.
Yeah.
So I think my whole left side was done. It was full of fluids. Yeah. And then the right side was mildly compromised too. Where it was going. So if it was, I guess it was at the point where if they both go out, that's it. You done.
But the problem is you can't put that kind of pressure. So let's say he's got pneumonia, fluid in his lungs, and you don't. I can use a lot more pressure to force oxygen into your bloodstream through healthy lung tissue. But once that tissue's inflamed and it's got fluid and it's clogged, you put pressure into that, it pops, it tears, it breaks. And so now, people were at one point in time, I'd have to go back and validate this statistics, but 7 out of 10 people on ventilators in the ICU were dying. Yeah, you had a greater chance of dying on a ventilator in the ICU than you did of COVID if you were hospitalized for that.
But how do they not know this?
Because
it was a pandemic.
It was a pandemic.
It was all
new. Panic. It was panic. It was
chaos. And nobody was talking about, like, I love your story because what eventually saved you was the intelligence of your own body. Whoever sent you the elderberry, probably vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc.
Yep.
This is the weapons your body needs to fight this virus. And so I was putting out tweets and posts like, you guys should get on vitamin D3, zinc, magnesium, high doses of vitamin C. Don't sit on your couch and wait until you can't breathe and go to the emergency room, right? Fight, right? Give your body the resources to fight itself. And people just, they attacked me. They're like, you're a charlatan. And I didn't even have anything to sell. I didn't even have vitamins to sell. So I don't know why I was a charlatan, but
because it was anti the boy. Whatever Fauci said, it was like God was talking or something. Like they didn't even want to.
And so, you know, that's a lot about my message is we get back to the, you know, when you look at why did COVID disproportionately affect minorities, for example? I mean, the reason why is because of the clinical deficiency of vitamin D3. They have compromised immune systems when the D3 is so deficient. So if we would just put those simple raw materials back into the human body, you know, going back to my days in the mortality space, you know, I was working for these insurance companies predicting death. The downside was, the sad thing was, that I was not allowed to have any contact with the patient or any contact with the treating physician. Even if I saw a life-threatening drug interaction, I could not contact the patient to warn them. I couldn't even contact a treating physician to warn them. And I cannot tell you how many times in 20 years of reading medical records, I saw people repeatedly being misdiagnosed that had simple nutrient deficiencies. In my industry, we called these modifiable risk factors, meaning the reason why this person was not going to live a long, healthy, happy life was something that was easily modifiable. Had I been able to just pick up the phone and call them, I could have added on average 7 years to their life. And I had a very specific case one day, which troubles me to this day, and I was not able to contact this woman to warn her that she was about to take a life-threatening prescription that was going to cause her to have an embolism, a stroke. And but I could see it in the medical record, and I was actually threatened with being criminally prosecuted if I reached out and contacted this lady.
Oh, wow.
And so I resigned from that industry, and I said, I'm not going to spend another minute of my life predicting,
watching people die.
Yeah. I'm going to spend the balance of my lifetime helping people live healthier, happier, longer lives.
That's incredible, man.
And so that was the day that I left that industry. It was 9 years ago today, and not today, nine years ago, almost to the day, and you know, got into the wellness space because the message about the beauty and the magnificence of the human body and how you can change the entire trajectory of your life by making simple shifts in what you do on a daily basis needs to get out there. And I'll give you another example. Just stick with vitamin D3, for example, and I can give you hundreds of these examples. You know, in 2016, there was a study done by Harvard, and they did the study on behalf of the National Institute of Health, and the government wanted to know what the leading causes of death were. And is it cardiovascular disease, cancer? And the third leading cause of death in America is medical error. So modern medicine is the third leading cause of death. Only cardiovascular disease and cancer kill more people than modern medicine. Wow. And it's not to say that doctors are sinister, or big pharma's out to kill us, hospitals are trying to kill people. That's not what I'm saying. Is we are very good at crisis medicine. We're terrible at teaching people how to live an optimally healthy life. And when you think that, you know, medical error is the third leading cause of death, it's shocking. But then when you take it a step further and you realize that the industry that is the third leading cause of death is the industry designed to prevent death. I mean, if you apply that to any other industry, it'd be laughable.
For sure.
You know what I mean? If you had a record label, you were the third leading cause of
flops,
career failure.
Flops.
You know, or you
literally laughable. So to get into the conspiracy theory, because I'm a follower of Dr. Sebi, and I love what he stood for. I you know, try to go and learn a little bit, you know, weekly. You know, I go and dive in. What are your thoughts on his medicine and his way of doing things, and his miraculous way of being, I don't want to say murdered, but how do you feel about the conspiracy around that whole thing and his spread of the message, and does that scare you?
It does actually scare me. I mean, I say it on every podcast. If I disappear, I need you to open an investigation.
That's right. Okay?
I'm very happy. I'm not going to hang myself on a bed sheet.
That's right.
Right. So if you're like, God, he left the podcast, hung himself the next day. It's so weird.
He's sick. How did he get sick?
Like, open investigation. We got a deal on it. I got you. So you guys lead it. But, you know, it's, you know, if you look at, you know, the trajectory of the pandemic, for example, you know, what's interesting about the pandemic is that we, and this is very much in agreement with what, you know, he was teaching. If you look at how we try to prevent disease, build immunity in the body. One of the first times that we tried something called an mRNA vaccine, right? We used to use something called attenuated virus. We'd take a viral envelope, which is called a nucleocapsid protein, had DNA inside of it. We'd snip that DNA out, and then we'd put this viral envelope into your body, and you'd manufacture an immune response to it. And in some ways, this was a lot more effective because there was no DNA, so it actually couldn't cause an infection. It couldn't infect you. And then during the pandemic, we came up with something called mRNA vaccines, messenger RNA vaccines. And what this does is it steals a message from the DNA. If you look inside of a cell and you find the nucleus and you go into the nucleus, you'll find the DNA. That's the boss. Okay, that's the CEO. He is running the show. He has two roles. One, replication. He makes an exact copy of himself. And number two, he writes messages into the cell. And he tells all the minions in the cell what to do. Kick this protein out, bring that nutrient in, you make this protein, you make that protein. It's running the show.
Yeah.
Okay, those messages are called mRNA, messenger RNA. So the only thing is that, inside of a cell, one of those messages will last 2 to 12 hours max. Well, what we did was we made a synthetic copy of that message. Okay? We stole the CEO's notepad and we made that message, and we made it synthetically. So that message in some cases is not degrading. So now if I'm the CEO and I'm giving commands out to the cell, I say, you go make this protein, spike protein. When you get back to your desk, I say, go make the spike protein. You come back to your desk, go make the spike protein. Go make the spike protein. Go make the spike protein. You continue to make this spike protein because the message never degrades. Now you get a rise in the spike protein. It floods out into the bloodstream. It embeds itself in the arterial wall, and you see this diffuse myriad of symptoms happening: transverse myelitis, trigeminal neuralgias, myocarditis, pericarditis.
But these kids falling out on the floor playing basketball and football
straight to their face.
So the question is that reversible? Like,
yes,
that message that the cells are getting, we can reverse that?
Yes, you can strip the spike protein out of your body, things like nanokinase, thymulin, bromelain. You give the body the raw material it needs to rid itself of these proteins. You can restore normalcy. But when you start to get inflammation in the lining of the blood vessel, just remember, you got 63,000 miles of blood vessel in your body. We love to talk about the skin being the largest organ in the body. I think it's the actual lining of the blood vessel, right? The skin has a surface area of about half a tennis court. The lining of your blood vessels has the surface area of 6 tennis courts, 12 times, right? 63,000 miles. So imagine if you can't get nutrients from the bloodstream into the tissue, and you can't get the junk from the tissue back into the blood, how detrimental that could be long term. And so, there's a lot of times where we make mistakes in modern medicine, and instead of correcting them, it's such a profitable venture that nobody just wants to say anything. This is what we knew in the mortality space. We had data, right? And, we looked at type 2 diabetes. It's a $110 billion industry. Don't think for 1 second.
Why would they want to get rid of that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why
You
would
think
they-
there's
why-
a meeting going on in
the
some
biggest
boardroom
money.
going, how do we put that out of business?
No way.
Right.
No. So
But Gary, that's what I was gonna say. Gary, how do we get rid of diabetes?
Well,
I'll tell you.
So before, right? Do you know who Dr. Sebi was? So Dr. Sebi is this black man who basically he did essentially what you do, right? It's all holistic healing. Long story short, just because I don't want to misrepresent who he was, but in the 80s or the 90s, he was taken to court by the federal government and the pharmaceutical industries because he had said that he cured AIDS. He had said that he cured cancer through some of these things you're talking about. I don't think he got as far into the actual medical aspect of it, but just from ancestral black history and grounding yourself with the earth and eating certain herbs. And he had a regimen that he would put in place for people. And some celebrities would go to him. Some have died mysteriously, right? Because they were trying to promote his message as we're doing now, promoting your message, right? But
scoot back.
he went to court. Essentially, what it boiled down to, he went to court with with hundreds of AIDS patients who had AIDS. So a physician would come in and say, yes, this guy has AIDS, has cancer. He would take them back. He would cure them. And then they would come back, and the physician would then say he no longer has AIDS, has cancer.
I do remember seeing some of this.
He was curing these people. Essentially, he beat the federal government and he beat Big Pharma through litigation, through proving that he was able to cure these people of AIDS. He was through holistic healing, through eating, right? So this is what he did. Mysteriously, he died in a jail cell in Honduras. He was a very old man, but he was very strong. He would do these feats where he would jump on top of tables. 80-year-old man, right? He's running around like this, like I'm gonna live forever, right?
And showing how strong his knees are.
Strong knees, yep.
Just really, really healthy older guy. And mysteriously,
he dies from sickness in jail in Honduras, where his facilities were.
Okay.
The government, obviously been trying to stop this guy for 40 years. Right. And then there's another guy, Nipsey Hussle, who's a rapper. He was doing a documentary on Dr. Sebi. He was putting a lot of, and then he ends up being murdered in his neighborhood, right? So, this is conspiracy stuff. I don't know, right? But there's this idea that Big Pharma, these people that are making billions, trillions even, trillions of dollars from selling the medicine, they're selling the disease, and then they're selling the medicine, right? We could get into, Fauci owning patents to the COVID,
making money,
and then
in PPE.
making the vaccine for it, and not even sharing those patents of the vaccine to certain countries who needed it. This is supposed to be a humanitarian effort, but you're not letting Mexico get the patent to be able to vaccinate their, et cetera, people in Africa, this sort of thing. Do you think, with the information that you're coming here with now, right, that there is a chance that you could be put in that sort of position of, these people coming after you because you've shown through your clientele, very famous people, very rich people, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you can live a healthier, longer life. What do you think the repercussions of something like that may or may not be?
Well, the repercussions may eventually catch up to me, but, I spent 20 years of my life, and I felt like I sat behind a thick glass wall and just watched blind people walk into traffic. And there was nothing that I could do. And, towards the tail end of my career, I would actually manipulate the model a little bit. What if I corrected this person's vitamin D3? What if I fixed their anemia? And I would watch their life expectancy jump. And then I realized, there are human beings on the other side of this spreadsheet. This is not just some woman applying for a life insurance. This is somebody's mother. This is somebody's sister. This is somebody's wife. And what would I think about a person who had the information I had that didn't reach out and touch my mother or touch my sister, or touch my wife? So I guess you got to figure out how you're going to go out, and I made a conscious decision to spend the balance of my lifetime, and I try not to hold back, withhold information, and I don't try to curtail it to, for my own, benefit, because I feel like that just lacks authenticity. And I feel like for 20 years I was very inauthentic, and for the balance of my lifetime, I'm going to be as authentic as I can, and I'm going to try to get this message out to people, because we are not as sick, as diseased, or as pathological as we are led to believe. We're told that, disease runs in families, which is patently false. We're told that the majority of disease is familial or genetically inherited. That's not true. We rarely, there are some exceptions, but we rarely inherit disease from our ancestors. What we inherit is the inability for the body to refine a raw material, to actually take a nutrient that comes into the body and convert it into the form the body can use. And this causes a deficiency. And it is this deficiency that leads to these diseases. So, for example, take one of the biggest in the world, hypertension, right? So high blood pressure. 85% of all high blood pressure diagnoses, 85%, are what we call idiopathic, meaning they're of unknown origin. So you go to the doctor and they say, hey, you've got high blood pressure. Well, what's wrong? Well, your EKG is normal, your EEG is normal, your heart and lung sounds are normal, your dye contrast study is normal, your cardiac catheterization is normal. We tested your heart every which way we could. There's nothing wrong with your heart. we're still going to medicate your heart anyway. We're going to get beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, diuretic. Even though we don't know what's wrong, we're still going to give you medication. You're going to be on this for the rest of your life. Well, then why do I have it? Well, because your father had it or your grandmother had it. That's patently false. The majority of what's happening is there's an amino acid in the blood called homocysteine. You have it, I have it, you have it. We all have it in our bloodstream. Some people have a genetic impairment where they don't metabolize this homocysteine very well. In other words, they don't break homocysteine down and turn it into a harmless amino acid called methionine. You can take a simple amino acid called TMG. You could go to GNC and get it right now, $27 a month. You could take this amino acid, you could begin to metabolize this homocysteine. What happens when homocysteine rises in the human bloodstream is, as it's cruising by the inside lining of the arteries, right? It irritates the artery. If you irritate an artery, it clamps down. If you make the pipes smaller in a fixed system, this is a closed system. If I make the pipes smaller, pressure goes up. There's nothing wrong with your heart. Your blood vessels are constricted. You take an amino acid, you metabolize homocysteine, the blood pressure, the vascular system relaxes, pressure returns to normal. You see, but if I convince you, if I can get you to buy off on the fact that you have a disease, then I can get you to buy off on the fact that you need a lifetime of medication.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And I could go through dozens and dozens and dozens of examples like this. We saw it all the time, back to vitamin D3. I can't even count the number of times that I saw somebody that had a clinical deficiency in vitamin D3, okay, the sunshine vitamin. They would have this deficiency and they would eventually, if this stays low enough, for long enough. By the way, both of y'all are going to start vitamin D3 after this podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I'll give it to you. So if this deficiency lasts long enough, it starts to mimic rheumatoid arthritis. Now, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but you have the same exact symptoms. Your ankles, your soles, your feet, and your ankles are sore when you get out of bed in the morning to walk to the bathroom, take your first piss. Your low back starts to ache.
Damn, that's me.
Oh, it's going to be a game changer for you. You know what we should do? I should do this blood test and gene test on you. We should come back in 12 weeks and you tell me. I will supplement you for deficiency. You tell me if you do not feel like an absolute superhuman in 12 weeks. Most of the people listening to this podcast right now, they are walking around at 50% of their true state of normal. They have no idea how good normal feels. They are usually 1 or 2 nutrients away from being optimal and having that clean, clear cognitive function, that incredible waking energy, that deep sleep, that youthful response to exercise, that libido of a tiger. And they've just chalked it up.
Hold on, let's stop at libido of a tiger.
Let's go.
I was wondering,
You asking for a friend?
Well, just for a friend, because with my younger self, man, I could 3 a day myself.
Yeah.
4 a day even, you know what I mean?
Ooh,
but
4 a day.
as I find myself getting older, 1 a week is enough. You know what I mean? Right. So,
damn. Help my guy.
So how do this? You saying this is going to make your boy? You know what I'm saying? Able to go in. With the back to my young self.
Let's just convert what you're saying to physiology, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you talk about libido, right, and sex drive, arousal, where does that come from? Especially in a man, it comes from something called free testosterone. Okay, so if I was able to magically go into your body and just deplete your free testosterone, okay, and bring that down, your libido would leave the building, right? Pretty soon your energy would start to come down. Your sleep would get interrupted. Your short-term recall, you'd start having a lot of brain fog. You'd get a great idea in the bedroom. You'd walk to the kitchen. You'd wonder what the heck you were doing in the kitchen, right? And then you would start thinking, well, I'm just getting older. Man, I got a stressful career. I travel a lot. I got a lot on my mind with my business. And my spouse is driving me up a wall. I got kids. It's whatever excuse you look for in the outside environment.
You could make it to something. Yeah.
Because the truth is that this is a deficiency. So if you were to say, well, what are the nutrient deficiencies that most commonly lead to this condition? There's a simple nutrient called DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. It's a simple nutrient. Again, you get it at GNC. DHEA and vitamin D3. If I deplete vitamin D3 and I deplete DHEA, your free testosterone will drop. As your free testosterone drops, your libido leaves the building. As it drops further, it takes the pressure off the bone marrow to make new red blood cells. So now your red blood cell count, your hemoglobin levels start to drop. Well, what does that mean? You have less oxygen in your blood. What does that mean? You're tired, you're fatigued. But see, now you don't have chronic fatigue syndrome. You don't have sleep apnea. You don't have any of these conditions that we may lead you to believe. You have a deficiency in free testosterone because your body's missing raw materials. You're missing.
So what's the
DHEA
difference
and D3.
of testosterone therapy and taking DHEA and D3?
Well, no matter what anybody tells you, there is no better hormone than one the body makes on its own. Okay, we make bioidentical hormones from yams. Now, if you can't make a hormone and it's low, it is better to replace it with something as close to that hormone as possible. But what if we could turn your own hormone factory back on? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of taking growth hormone from outside the body, take an amino acid peptide to increase your production of your own growth hormone. Instead of taking testosterone from outside of the body, turn the signal up to the testicle to increase your own production of your own hormone. I mean, you'd much rather be high on your own supply than take something from outside the body and put it in.
Yeah.
Right? If you
then you
have
become
to,
more dependent on that
Yeah, as
thing
soon as you-
versus your body producing it itself.
Yes.
Doing what it naturally does.
I'm a big fan of hormone therapy if you need it, but 70% of the people that come to see me that would qualify for hormones are not on hormones.
Yeah.
They're on nutrients so their bodies can make their own hormones, right? And so there's a big difference there. And, because of the way our food supply is so depleted and our water is so poisoned, fluoride, chlorine, microplastics, pharmaceuticals, genetically modified foods, it's, again, going back to the distance from the food to the table, these are the things that are assaulting our bodies, right? And we weren't meant to process glyphosate, which is in pesticides, and Roundup, and herbicides. We weren't meant to be swallowing fluoride, right? Fluoride is fluorosilicic acid. It is
Isn't that in like toothpaste too?
It's in toothpaste. By the way, read the back of a toothpaste label. You ever flip a toothpaste label around?
It says do not ingest.
It says, if swallowed, contact poison control immediately. That's a required disclosure, by the way. So if you got a tube of Crest toothpaste back here, I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
Never use fluoride toothpaste. Stop drinking tap water. Don't eat GMO foods. There's some simple things that you can do to totally change the trajectory of your life. I tell people, permanently get tap water out of your life. Either drink bottled or spring water or get a water filter for your home. We take the waste product from making commercial fertilizer, which is called fluorosilicic acid. We then put it in our drinking water as fluoride. We can't use it in fertilizer because it will kill the seed. So we take it out, we throw it away, and we put it in our municipal water supply. We do, the same thing with like chlorines and microplastics and what have you. So if we could get to it, spring water source, great. So your best option is drink spring water or invest in a water filtration system for your home. That'll be the first thing I would do to clean up. And that's life.
Taking a shower as well? Or?
You can get a whole home water filtration system that'll filter water down to a couple of microns. And you're, if you look at my Instagram, I did a story the other day where I just took 2 glasses of tap water, right? I set them on a table. And I actually had Max, my head of production, be my guinea pig. And I had him put 4 fingers into one of the glasses, right? And he held it in there for 30 seconds, and he took his 4 fingers out. And then I tested both glasses for chlorine. I put drops in to show chlorine. One of them turned bright yellow to show that it was full of chlorine. The other one was crystal clear. There was no chlorine in that glass. And I asked people, I said, why do you think there's no chlorine in the one he put his fingers in? Because it instantly went into his skin.
Sheesh.
That was how quickly his skin sucked the chlorine up. So now we're allowing our bodies to be the filter rather than filtering things for our bodies. So if we put up a little fence of awareness around ourselves, and I say, listen, I'm not going to put these genetically modified foods in my body. I'm not going to put tap water into my body. I'm not going to put seed oils into my body. And I'm going to try to eat whole, clean foods. Just those changes right there change the entire trajectory of your life. If you took your shoes off once in a while and contacted the surface of the earth, you discharged into the earth. Earthing and grounding is a very real thing. Human beings were meant to spend 85% of our time outdoors. We spend 97% of our time indoors now. We regulate our air temperature.
Man, we should have did
our
this
lighting.
interview outside.
Yeah. They got the curtains pulled in here.
Right.
Gary, so my pretty much every elder in my family has some sort of diabetes. I'm talking about my parents, my aunts, my uncles on both sides. Pretty much all of them have diabetes. What would be your suggestion for them? Because I'm constantly trying to implore to them that there is another option.
There absolutely is.
And that they don't have to live their entire life with diabetes. You can you can revert this thing. You can do away with it if you take the proper steps.
Absolutely. So I would get them doing 3 things right out of the gate. I would have them supplement with a root called berberine with every meal. It is more effective than metformin at lowering blood sugar, and it is a root. The second thing I would do is have them supplement with a methylated multivitamin. A multivitamin that where the nutrients in this vitamin have already been broken down for the body. Okay, I make one called 10X Optimize. There are lots of great manufacturers, Thorne, Pure Encapsulations, Athletic Greens, Body Health. There are lots of great manufacturers of these types of methylated vitamins. So if they're listening to this, write that word down. So you give your body the raw material that it needs to do its job. So I would have them take berberine. I would have them take a methylated multivitamin. I would absolutely have them supplement with 5,000 IUs, international units, of vitamin D3 with K2. That's where they start. Then the second thing is we have to realize that if something is essential, it's necessary for life. Okay, so there are 3 essential fatty acids. If you don't get these 3 fatty acids, you'll die. Okay, so there's essential fats. There are 9 essential amino acids, proteins. If you don't get these 9 proteins, you'll die. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. So just let it marinate for a second. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, meaning carbohydrates are not necessary for life. So when you are making food choices, be the most judicious with your choice of carbohydrate, right? You want to die fast, eat white flour.
I come from a Haitian family. I tell my mama she can't have no rice. She gonna be like, "What do you mean? What is life worth if without rice? What am I living
Limited,
for?"
that's all, you know? But listen, meat, fish,
real.
chicken, eggs, avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, nuts, these whole foods are amazing. And when we start looking at white flour, white rice, white bread, white pasta, white potatoes, these are nutritionless foods that increase our blood sugar, and we can limit these and use our judicious carbohydrate choices for things like berries, and sweet potatoes, and that alone, bringing their blood sugar down and supporting the body's ability to eliminate waste and process these things, just those small changes alone change the entire trajectory of their life.
If they completely strip their life of carbohydrates, is that the best option?
That's
Or
the best option
is it
to
microdosing?
Well, it's the best option to reset, right? I put people on what I call a keto reset for things like that, like severely elevated blood sugar, like Dana White, for example. You know, it was a very difficult concept for him to grasp that he had a life-threatening level of fat in his blood, triglycerides. And I put him on a high-fat diet to bring down the fat in his blood. And he was like, "You're going to put me on a keto diet?" But I thought I was dying of blood fat. You are. I need your body to switch its fuel source from carbohydrates to fat. I want your body to see fat as a resource. It's called ketosis, being in ketosis. Once your body sees fat as a resource, it eats the fat out of the bloodstream like a Pac-Man, right? And it brought his triglycerides from in the 800s down to about 130.
Don't your body go into ketosis when you're fasting too?
Yes, it'll go into ketosis when you're fasting too.
The best thing to eat coming out of ketosis is something fatty.
Yes, and the best thing to eat is like liquid protein. So I would have a bowl of bone broth coming out of a fast. I would actually have steamed vegetables sauteed in butter. I'd even have some whole fat Greek yogurt with some berries in it. You just want to ease your digestion, you know, coming out of a fast. But if you're a type 2 diabetic, you can go without carbohydrates. Every human being entered this world on a keto diet, right? And you know, the first 48 hours of life, we ingest mother's milk. We ingest something called colostrum. It's extraordinarily high in fat. And anytime we fast, we go into ketosis. So you put somebody into ketosis for 10 to 12 weeks. It's called a keto reset. And then as they come out of ketosis, now you start to judiciously add carbohydrates. Well, dude, you give the pancreas a break. The pancreas makes insulin, right? The betas, the islet cells in the pancreas, they make insulin. So you can give the pancreas a break, and you can actually still feed the body nutritious foods. And then you give it supplementation, berberine, methylated multivitamins, vitamin D3, so it can start to actually do its job. And you can, we have walked, my clinical team, I'm not licensed to practice medicine, my clinical team is, we have walked dozens and dozens and dozens of patients right out of type 2 diabetes.
So Serena Williams.
We just changed topics.
No, we're not changing topics.
Okay.
Serena Williams was recently online selling leftover breast milk or something. They said she had all this leftover breast milk that she didn't use. It was in the freezer. Should I buy Serena Williams
The colostrum?
leftover breast milk and go ahead and consume it? Is
Wow.
that a real thing?
That's a new one to me. I mean, colostrum's a real thing, man.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how much breast milk Serena Williams can make. How much?
It was a lot. It was like a freezer full of it. So I'm like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
That's the best milk on the market.
Yeah.
Hey, that's some athlete. That's some.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Grand
Actually,
Slam breast milk right
That
there.
is some Grand Slam breast milk right there. I was not expecting that question, so you caught me off guard. But colostrum's a real thing, though. When a lot of times when I have clients that have gut issues, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, one of the things we try to do is soothe the gut with colostrum and peptides like BPC 157. It is amazing, again, what happens to the human body when you just start giving it nutrients it needs to do its job. If you were to take a poll of the people listening to this podcast and you were to say, how many of you either suffer from anxiety or know somebody that suffers from anxiety? I bet it would be north of 60, 70%, right? Because if we don't suffer from it, we know somebody. How many of you either suffer from depression or know somebody who is depressed? When we start to look at these conditions and we call them mental illnesses, see, we started off on the wrong track right there. It's a lack of mental fitness, right? So when we talk about what anxiety is, for example, why do people suffer from anxiety? It's because their body cannot regulate, cannot break down a category of neurotransmitters called catecholamines. These are fight or flight neurotransmitters. So once we understand that the brain does not know the difference between perception and reality, we understand where anxiety comes from. So for example, if you drove home tonight and you got out of your car and somebody was standing in front of you with a knife, right? You would instantly start to have a fight or flight response. Your pupils would dilate, your heart rate would increase, your extremities would flood with blood. You would start having a fight or flight response. Well, you might actually attack them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would have the fight response.
But I don't think I'm going to panic at all. I'm going to be like, it's up.
Is that all you brought?
Yeah, like, what's going on here?
I thought this was going to be fun.
But your body's still going to go into a mode.
Yeah,
that,
your
like,
field of vision would widen.
Yeah,
Your hearing
like-
would get more acute.
Yeah,
Your heart rate would
like
increase.
any hunter,
Turn into a beast, though.
Yeah, no.
But that's
you
part
turn
of it.
into a beast because of the fight or flight.
Okay.
I'm not saying you would flight. You might actually fight, but your body is preparing for either. But my point is, you could also be laying in this bedroom right here. What floor are we on here?
11 was it?
Okay, so we're on the 11th floor of a condo, and you could start thinking about getting eaten by a shark. The chances of a shark coming up that elevator and getting into that bedroom are zero. But you can have the exact same response to the presence of a real
My response
fear.
is I'm going to beat the shark up.
How did he get on here, dude? Were you like hurting for guests? I mean, what happened, dude?
I'm whooping a shark, man.
He's fighting sharks, people with knives. You gotta know. I'll find something he's afraid of. All right. Serena Williams shows up at the door. He's like, all right, now I'm running.
Wrestling match.
So, but the point is that, we don't need the presence of a fear to feel fear. This is why people have anxiety without anything going on in their outside environment. This is why most people report anxiety without a trigger. And yet they're suffering from this. And what's happening is their body is deficient in certain B vitamins, what's called B complex, a certain B12 vitamin called methylcobalamin, and something called methylfolate. You put these nutrients into the human body, and very often they will begin to break down these catecholamines, right? So they won't be sitting in a podcast like this or out with their family at dinner and start getting overwhelmed by anxiety and have somebody tell them they have a mental disease.
Do you ever see people like on the internet and think to yourself, oh, they might be lacking in this or that or this
Every
or that.
day.
So Kanye West, you know what I'm saying? Do you think you can reverse and give us back the old Kanye?
Yes.
You think we could go ahead?
I would love to, make that my project because, it's not mental illness. It's a lack of mental fitness, right? Like if you said to me, what is a mood? Like, what is an emotion? Like, what exactly is it? It's a collection of neurotransmitters, right? It's a recipe. And, we put this, so if I want to make happiness, okay, that's so much serotonin, so much dopamine, so much norepinephrine, boom, I have the emotion of happiness. What if your body lacks one of those ingredients? What if you have very low serotonin production? Mm-hmm. Well, now it's like going to a bakery chef and saying, listen, you can bake whatever you want. You just can't use butter. Okay, that doesn't sound like a big deal. It's only one ingredient. But just think of the number of recipes that would affect. Cookies, pastries, pies, brownies. Now I go to a human being and I say, you can be in whatever emotional state you want. You just can't use serotonin. Okay, well now, every emotion that requires serotonin, you can't manufacture. So you stopped reacting the way that someone normal would react to a situation. You start having thoughts that a normal person wouldn't have. You start having reactions and actions that a normal person wouldn't have. Not because you are mentally ill, but because you lack the mental fitness. You lack the raw material to manufacture adequate emotion.
And what is serotonin exactly?
So serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It's the main driver of mood. Dopamine is another neurotransmitter. It's the main driver of behavior. This is why people that are low in dopamine engage in dopamine-seeking behavior. What is that? Addiction. The absence of dopamine is the presence of addiction.
Yeah, you can get some dopamine by just giving somebody a hug.
Yes.
Sex, you can get dopamine from sex.
Cold plunge, you can get it from.
Cold plunge.
But people are going for cocaine, nicotine, alcohol, gambling, porn, right?
You probably get some dopamine from porn too, but
What do you think? Have you talked to any friends?
Nah, I just know that there's a epidemic of young men that are just, they calling them incels or this sort of thing, that are like just consuming a lot of porn in the house, playing video games, etc. So I think that, we need to.
Now the question is,
even this could substitute
no doubt
addiction and be able to try to get them out of there. So I think this is important for those people too.
It is, because we never treat the dopamine addiction. If you've ever actually been an addict or you've known a true addict, you will notice one thing. Their addiction has a tendency to shift. It never really goes away. Maybe they're on Suboxone and you get them off. They're on nicotine, they stop smoking, or they're drinking and they stop drinking. But now they're smoking weed, or the guy that was drinking is vaping, and the guy that was vaping is gambling, or they become workaholics or workoutaholics. Why does the addiction shift? Because it's the absence of dopamine that is causing.
That's why you work out so much, because you
I need dopamine.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is there's a form of dopamine that I get when I'm on stage, and it is a high that you cannot get from anywhere else.
Same.
Right. Yeah. So like after we come off stage, right, and it is as crazy as you could possibly believe, and all of that energy is coming at us, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as I get off stage, for that 30 minutes, I am coming down off of something.
Yeah. Oh, no. I know
exactly
exactly that feeling.
And I think that is the thing that a lot of other musicians are searching for within their lives. And we see all these musicians and how tormented they are. It's because, one of the reasons I should say, is because that they're searching for the same kind of high in different places. Mm-hmm. A lot of them turn to gambling. A lot of them turn to drugs. And it's because they're constantly trying to get that specific high from somewhere else. Thankfully, I think working out does it for me.
It does. I mean, working out, cold plunging, all spike dopamine, make you feel amazing.
Is there such thing as a good addiction?
Well, what happens is we have addictions that we call healthy addictions. Yeah. Workaholics, workoutaholics. When I was a competitive triathlete for years, I would say 40% of the guys that I competed with were recovering addicts. Right? This was their new addiction. But the truth is that we need to treat the dopamine deficiency. Remember, dopamine and serotonin are made in the gut. All right, 90% of the serotonin in your body is right here. If you don't have it here, you can't have it here. Mm-hmm. So that's why a lot of these mental conditions rarely begin up here. They actually begin down here in the gut, right? And so the serotonin factory is fairly easy to turn back on. If you take the right complex of B vitamins, the right complex of B12, you have methylfolate, magnesium, and zinc. If you are not deficient in those, you should be manufacturing these neurotransmitters adequately. If you are deficient in these, then you don't, you know how we make serotonin? We take an amino acid called tryptophan, the one that makes you sleepy on Thanksgiving. It's in Turkey. We convert tryptophan into the neurotransmitter serotonin. So what if you can't make this conversion?
Black people call it the itis.
The itis?
The itis. Well, you got the itis, boy.
You eat so much you can't move.
Yeah, you're just tired. You got the itis.
I'm going to take that one home with me. I like that. Sure. The itis.
Yeah, you got
Turkey-itis.
man.
So, what if we put the raw materials back into the body so the guts could start to convert tryptophan into serotonin? Well, now serotonin rises in the gut. When it rises in the gut, it's available to the brain. And then their personality goes back to normal. And it's because they never really had a mental illness. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have the raw material their body needed to manufacture appropriate mood. And I wish we would continue to look at human beings this way. When I was in grad school, I was actually getting my second human biology degree, and I had to take all these plant botany courses. Like you had to study plants, which I hated, but you had to do it. And the one thing I'll never forget is that it didn't matter what was going wrong in a tree or shrub or bush. Let's say you had a palm tree and the leaves are rotting in the palm tree. If you called a true arborist, a true botanist out, he would look at that leaf rotting in the top, and the first thing he would do is core test the soil. He would go, you know what? There's no nitrogen in this soil. Then he would put nitrogen on the soil, and the leaf would heal. Right? He didn't cut it. He didn't spray it with poison. He didn't trim it. He gave that tree the missing raw material. He gave that tree nitrogen. Now, you could have put anything else on that soil, but if you didn't hit that nutrient, nitrogen, that leaf never would have healed. We've stopped thinking about human beings this way. As soon as something goes wrong, we say pathology, disease. He's got hypertension, high blood pressure, hypothyroid, hypercholesterolemia. He inherited it from his father. Father had high blood pressure. He's got it. You got to be on medication the rest of your life. We say we label all of these diseases. He's schizophrenic. He's got ADD, ADHD, OCD, manic depression, bipolar. All of these things that we call diseases and pathology. And the truth is that person is probably just simply deficient in raw materials.
Would you say the same for cancers? My greatest friend in the world, super successful within his life and has conquered the world, but then has fallen to sickness and
Cancer?
Cancer. And it's crazy because you can literally do everything right within the world and work hard and then have all the money in the world. But when you are sick, what does any of it mean?
Facts.
Fact. You've done everything correctly. Beautiful family, one of the most successful people in the world. Yeah. And then now what? So I say that to say everything that we've spoke about today was about putting things putting things in your body, the right things in your body to fight the sickness. Is it the same for cancer, or should you be taking things away?
Well, once you have cancer, you should take certain things away. The first thing you should take away is sugars. Cancer needs three things. It needs an acidic environment, meaning not alkaline, but acidic. It needs a hypoxic environment, an area of the body that's deprived of oxygen. In the mortality space, we used to say that the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease.
What does that mean exactly?
That means that we did not find a single disease etiological pathway, meaning source of disease or something that made disease worse, that did not have its roots in a lack of oxygen.
How do you get oxygen to your blood?
So let's talk about, like, for example, the largest reason that somebody would walk into one of our clinics, my clinics, which are called 10X Health, is, younger age, middle-aged, older, as they walk in, they're like, I just don't have the same energy level I used to have. I'm tired all the time. So when you tell me you don't have the same energy level, I just convert energy into physiology. So what does energy mean in the human body? It means oxygen. When you say everything that you feel about energy is nothing more than oxygen in your blood. If you told me, Gary, I had a lot of energy today, physiologically what you're saying is I had a lot of oxygen in my blood today. Part of the reason why exercise makes you feel so good. So if I want to raise your oxygen level, what do? Well, I go into the body and I say, what carries oxygen? Red blood cell inside of a fluid called hemoglobin. So if you drop the number of red blood cells or you drop the amount of hemoglobin, you're going to be tired. You're going to be exhausted. And so how do I raise red blood cells and raise hemoglobin? I make sure that your hormones are balanced, because inside the human body, when your testosterone is low, men and women, there's no pressure on the bone marrow to make these red blood cells. So as hormone levels drop, red blood cell count and hemoglobin drop, oxygen drops, energy follows. So when we talk about increasing the amount of oxygen, number one, I always tell people that they should learn to do 3 to 8 minutes of breath work a day. That is the one thing that I do every single day that I will never, ever, ever, ever miss.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you give us a short version of what that is, so that
Yes.
we can take this and apply it to our lives?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I do a Wim Hof style of breath work. And part of the reason is that we just we don't move as much as we used to. You know, sedentary lifestyle, lack of mobility, sitting is the new smoking, right? I mean, and sedentary lifestyle is now the leading cause of all-cause mortality. Because what happens when we sit? Our respiratory rate drops. What happens when our respiratory rate drops? We get less oxygen into the blood. We are less able to defend ourselves. Our mitochondria, what make all the energy in the body that eat mainly oxygen, feed off of oxygen, are depleted. So every morning that you wake up, and this will cost you nothing, within 30 minutes, I usually will go outside, expose my skin to sunlight, and I will do 3 rounds of 30 breaths. And I can demonstrate it for you.
Yes, please.
All right. And credit goes to Wim Hof. I mean, he's the father of this. But basically, you just sit comfortably. I try to face the sun. In the first 45 minutes of the day, remember that first light, there's no UVA, there's no UVB rays. So no damaging rays from the sun, right?
What time? What time in the morning?
So when it breaks the horizon for another 45 minutes, there's no damaging light, okay? So you face the sun, just sit comfortably, and then what you're gonna do is we'll start with 3 to 5 breaths, because you might get lightheaded.
Yep.
We're gonna take 3 obnoxiously deep breaths. And when I say obnoxious, like you've been underwater for 2 minutes, you never thought you were gonna get another breath of air. You just broke the surface of the air, broke the surface of the water. So you're gonna go like this. And then just relax. We'll do it again. Okay, so I want people to start with, you feel that a little head rush? Just from 3 breaths. That's the oxygen tension changing in your tissues. That's the carbon dioxide and the nitrogen leaving and the oxygen flooding the
I'm
tension.
definitely lightheaded.
Supposed to get a little lightheaded, yeah.
Lightheaded from 3 breaths. So that's how much carbon dioxide you had. So now you do 3 rounds of 5 breaths. Work your way up to 10, 15, 20, 25, and then 30. And what happens is, so at the end of your 5th breath, you exhale and you want to close your eyes and you want to hold your breath as long as you can. And the reason for that is the main vasodilator in the body is not nitric oxide. People think it's nitric oxide. That's why they take all these NO2 supplements that give you veins. The main vasodilator in the body is carbon dioxide. As carbon dioxide rises, your vascular system dilates. You want it to dilate, and then you take an obnoxiously deep breath in. You hold that breath as long as you can, then you let it out. And you start over. So start 5 deep breaths, exhale, hold as long as you can. Inhale, hold as long as you can. Exhale, and start over. Do 3 rounds of that. I am not kidding you. Just do it for 7 days. Do it from the time you hear this podcast, or you guys can start tomorrow. Do it from the time you hear this podcast for 7 days. You will never miss again. It will become your new drug of choice. Because what happens is it raises the dopamine, it improves your mood, it improves your emotional state, your diaphragm massages your intestines, it actually gets your motility in your intestines going. You elevate the amount of dopamine and serotonin in the body, and you flood the blood with oxygen. So for hours after you've done a short round of breath work, you feel amazing. The other thing you do is you make sure that you do it within 30 minutes of waking every day. And the reason for that is your circadian clock will get timed to that breath work. When you change time zones, as soon as you do breath work, your body will know this is the time to wake up.
Is this before my coffee?
Before your coffee.
Do you have coffee, by the way?
I do. Yeah. I don't have any issues with coffee. So I'll go outside. I'll do 3 rounds of 30 breaths with a breath hold in between, and then I'll go back inside and have my coffee. It will become your new drug of choice. You know, I did, 11 cities in 9 days on this big tour that I was on. And I know you know what it's like to travel like that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you don't know if you're in LA or New York or Dubai or London. Yeah. You don't know what time zone you're on. And your body and your circadian clock gets all out of whack. But if every day you wake up and within 30 minutes you're doing 3 rounds of 30 breaths, your body starts to rely on that routine. You give it some consistency. Mm-hmm. Food is changing, the water's changing, the time zone's changing, the bed's changing, but that breath work's consistent. And your body will start to key into that circadian clock. It will do worlds of good for people that travel a lot.
So this is the oxygen portion of the couple of things that you were talking about for cancer.
Yes.
What's
so
next?
Learn to do breath work. I would take what's called your glycemic profile, your carbohydrate and sugar intake. I would take it to 0. I would keep my body in a state of ketosis, because when you're in ketosis, your body is using something called beta hydroxybutyrate as a fuel source. It's using fat, ketone bodies as a fuel source. You are actually starving the cancer. Cancer is a highly metabolic cell, right? It metabolizes at a faster rate. In fact, some of the most promising cancer treatments right now are where they use 1/10 of the dose of chemotherapy. Okay, they use 1/10 of the dose. But what they do is they put the patient into a state of ketosis. They take all the sugars and carbohydrates out of their body. Their body's only burning fat as a resource. So imagine if you had 2 cells. One was a cancer cell, one was a regular cell. And they were walking around a track, okay? The cancer cell would be the cell that's in a dead sprint going around that track. Normal body cell would be the cell that's just walking. Okay? That cancer cell needs more fuel. It's more active. It needs more glucose. It needs a readily available source of energy. You can starve it by not feeding it glucose. And what they do is they put these patients into a state of ketosis. And once they're in ketosis, what they do is they take the chemotherapy and they actually mix it with straight sugar, with glucose. And they inject it into their bloodstream. And what happens is the cancer cell will suck up 70 times the amount of chemotherapy as a regular cell. Because that cancer cell is like, give me that sugar, give me that fuel. It's sprinting, and it sucks that chemotherapeutic agent up, and it kills itself, and a normal metabolic cell is left unharmed. And now people are not losing their hair and dropping weight and being fatigued and basically becoming emaciated from these chemotherapeutic agents. Mm-hmm. Because we're actually using the body's resources of fasting and ketosis to target, a cancer cell. So that's what I would do. I would make certain that the food sources that you're eating are purely organic whole foods. Right? I mean, the amount of glyphosates, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and nonsense we put in our food is astounding.
I wanna ask you about weight loss, because I seen the transformation that Stephen A. had. I seen Dana, his transformation. Mm-hmm. So my journey been a little crazy over the last couple years. I was about 270. I got down to 228, and then now I'm back up to like 240. But I would like to, stay around 210 if I could get there. I haven't been 210 since I was in high school.
Okay.
What method would you use on somebody like me who is trying to,
So first, I'd want to get some data on you. I'd want to get 74 biomarkers in your blood, and I want to get 5 markers of genetics. If I get those 2 pieces of information, I can turn you into a superhuman.
I want to be a superhuman.
Okay. This is, we got to do. We should do this and come back in 12 weeks or something and
see
talk about transformation and then just lay it all the cards out there. This is how I feel. This is what I'm doing, and maybe even share the blood work to show people that it's not as hard as you think. I have no magic pill. I haven't developed something that's proprietary only to me. You know, I help people get back to the basics, and I help them find information in their body, and then, you know, take advantage of that. So I would suspect that you have some blood sugar regulation issues. I would suspect that you have high, what's called hemoglobin A1C, elevated blood sugar, and probably high insulin. Because when your insulin is high, the body cannot burn fat. Okay, so
I work out every day too.
Yeah.
Go to the gym and
So if you're not seeing the results that you want, the first thing we got to do is get the insulin and the blood sugar down. I would recommend intermittent fasting. I would eat my first meal at noon. I'd eat my last meal no later than 8 o'clock at night. And then
I've been doing that.
Okay. And in the morning, I would work out in a fasted state, except I would take something called a perfect amino acid. And this is the 9 essential amino acids that the body needs to not break down and metabolize muscle. You can hydrate, you can have black coffee. You take these amino acids, and then the first thing you do is 30 minutes of steady state cardio. Steady state cardio is cardiovascular exercise where your heart doesn't get over about 135 beats a minute. You're walking on a treadmill. For me, that's about an incline of 5% and a pace of about 3.5.
I do an incline of 15 at 4.
Okay, perfect. Do that for 30 minutes and then start your weight training. If you have the time to weight train.
That's what I do.
Okay.
But I think I need the supplement though.
We definitely need to look at the blood. This is why
you can't get on the treadmill on the incline and then hold the rails. You can't hold the rails.
Yeah, that takes the incline out.
So if you're gonna have it on 15, you can't touch the rails and then you gotta walk. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't.
Yeah, I do hold.
You hold.
Yeah,
I know you hold. because this is the thing. When I'm looking at your story and I'm looking at the numbers, they're astronomical numbers.
I'm going crazy.
I'm like, there's no way Sin is doing more than I'm doing. There's just no way. That's not possible. So
I am bigger, faster, stronger than you.
No, you're not. You're not any of those things.
What?
But listen, I do this thing every day, so I know what it's supposed to look like, and I know you're probably letting the treadmill ging, and you got your feet on the side.
No way, never in my life.
No,
never.
Well, your numbers are.
But I do hold sometime. But I see everybody in the gym doing that. I thought it was just because it's difficult to.
If you want the accurate calories that you're seeing, because those aren't even accurate. But if you
I'm not burning 600 calories every 30 minutes.
No, you're not. No. Mm-mm.
So how many calories do the average person burn in 30 minutes of treadmill?
If you were doing every 10 minutes you were doing 100 calories, that's amazing. You're doing a great job.
I could do that easily. Who did he look to?
I'm looking at Noah. Noah's a workout buff too, and he pointed out your numbers to me.
Noah's a hater. That sound like hate a little bit, right?
There's some shit going on behind the scenes here.
It's like, what's going on? I'm trying to, but ultimately, I want to be healthier, right?
Yes.
I'm 35 years old. I don't have no kids. I'm gonna be an old dad if I do decide to have kids. Mm-hmm. So I want to be able to live a long, healthy life through that. You know what I mean?
We need to get some information.
I'm ready. I came with my money ready.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, when I meet Gary, I'm ready. You know what I mean?
Tomorrow I'll have you guys over to the biohacking lab. If you guys got time tomorrow.
For sure.
And we'll get some blood work. We'll get this gene test done. And once I get those 2 pieces of information, I'm telling you, I'll turn you into a superhuman. Because I'm going to ask your body a set of specific questions. It's going to give me a set of truthful, specific answers. It's going to say, listen, this is what I need. I need this mineral, this vitamin, this nutrient, these amino acids. We're going to put those into your body. We're going to give it what it needs. And then we're going to find out if there's sugars or insulin or other things in the way, hormones. And we're going to put all those into the optimal range, and then you will see your body transform in a way that will be shocking. Because again, it's like that. It's like that tree that missed the nitrogen. Mm-hmm. You didn't find that nitrogen. That leaf would never heal. And people go through their entire lives, and that leaf's just rotten, and we're cutting it and skinning it and spraying poison on it, and all we needed to do was put a certain raw material back. I would suspect that you're deficient in vitamin D3, B12, that there's a little bit of hormone imbalance, and that you're high in insulin and blood sugar. We'll see. And once we find that data out,
It's a wrap.
it's a wrap, because now we have data. And the problem is, if you don't have that information, you're like, you're fighting a fight with a blindfold on. Mm-hmm. You're just hoping one of those swings is going to connect. You just, you really just you can't see the data. And this is why I really encourage people to get their blood work checked. There are 5 genes that I think everybody should look at, because a genetic test you do once in your lifetime. You find out what your body can process and what it can't, and then you give that to your body. There are people that can't process certain B vitamins. They can't process certain things like folic acid. And you got to get those things out of your diet and supplement for that deficiency. And this is when magic happens in the human body. You're not going to believe how fast you transform.
Okay, I got 2, maybe 3, really poignant questions. Mm-hmm. One is, okay, say I have an unlimited budget. LeBron James says that, he spends around $1 million on his body alone a year. I go into Paris Hilton's house. She has a whole sector in the house that just has all of these biohacking things, from the cryotherapy to the red light. If I have an unlimited budget, what are the things that are going to help me to become superhuman?
So if you have an unlimited budget, first of all, if you don't have a budget, learn to do grounding, sunlight, breath work, and take a cold shower. Mm-hmm. None of those things will add a dime to your budget.
Free.
Okay, that's where you start. If you have an unlimited budget, you need 4 things. I would get a cold plunge, because it is just astounding what cold water immersion does to the human body, and it's very inexpensive and it's very safe. I would get something called hypermax oxygen. I would get you can find this on my Instagram, but this is called EWOT, exercise with oxygen therapy, or multi-step oxygen therapy. It's an oxygen concentrator. It takes 21% O2, fills a bag with 95% oxygen. You breathe that for 10 to 12 minutes while you walk on a treadmill, and you flood the blood with oxygen. And then you go right from that into a red light therapy bed. And I'm talking about a red light therapy bed that closes around you.
Sheesh.
And
I need one of those.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what Dana White and a lot of these guys have. And again, I get assaulted for this online whenever I suggest it. I suggest you do the things for free first. But if you do have an unlimited budget, you get a red light therapy bed. That'll run you about 110, 115 grand. And this will have 45,000 light diodes. And what it will do is it'll send infrared, near infrared, and red light through your skin, reduce inflammation, increase circulation, microvascular circulation especially. But what this does, the magic is, one of these wavelengths of light goes into your cell, and it goes into an organelle in the cell called the mitochondria. This is where human beings are powered. 10% of your body weight's mitochondria, right? Aging is a mitochondrial disease. And it kicks out a gas called nitric oxide, and it forces oxygen into that cell. And remember I said that the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease?
Yep.
Nothing is more true than that statement. If I can force oxygen into 32 trillion cells, I get a 16-fold increase in cellular energy. Your cells will begin to eliminate waste, repair, detoxify, and regenerate at a rate you never thought possible. The longer you spend in a red light therapy bed, the more youthful in appearance you'll take on. The more that you will notice things like cognitive function improve, and the healthier you will be at a cellular level. So I would get a red light therapy bed, and the third thing I would get is something called a PEMF mat, pulse electromagnetic field. If you think about the last time you had bare feet touching bare soil, dirt, grass, sand, for most people, it's been a very long time.
For sure.
That was the last time you discharged into the earth. So we know that the body...
What about the beach, like sand? Is
excellent.
That,
yeah, that's excellent. That's why you feel so good when you're at the beach. For
sure.
Right? So, if you guys have been doing that here, that's great.
Yeah.
You just bare feet touching bare soil, sand is great for you. But
So the same level? Like, it doesn't matter whether it's grass or the beach sand?
grass, dirt, sand, as long as it's not concrete, pavers.
The earth.
Yeah, the actual earth, right? Not turf. Right on the earth. And you will discharge into the earth. And so what happens when you discharge into the earth? You change the polarity of the surface of your cells. If I put your blood under a microscope, you would see that right now all your red blood cells are kind of stuck together and clumped up. It's not a blood clot, but they have this opposite charges, so they're attracted to each other. When you do earthing and grounding, it makes the surface of that cell the same charge, like two north poles of a magnet. They don't touch. And so there's something called a PEMF mat. It looks like a yoga mat. You put it in your bed at night. It plugs into the wall. Turn it on when you go to sleep, and it runs for 30 minutes. It runs this low Gauss current through your body. You will wake up alkaline every morning.
Let me go to that right now.
So if you had an unlimited PEMF mat, I would get a cold plunge.
How much is that one?
A Hypermax, cold plunge is probably going to run you about $5,000. Hypermax will run you $5,000. The PMF mat will run you $5,000, and a red light bed will run you about $115,000.
Okay, so for $200,000, you can have your superhuman facility.
Come over tomorrow, and I'll show you the whole thing. And you can add all kinds of silly little stuff to that. I have a sauna and a steam and some other things, but the truth is, those four, you're alkaline, oxygenate, and then use the red light therapy.
Gary, I put a steam room in my house instead of the sauna, and I beat myself up all the time about it. Is there any benefit to the steam as opposed to the sauna?
The steam will actually steam is a steam and a dry sauna are very similar.
But nobody ever talks about the steam.
I know, because it's a lot more difficult to put a steam room in the sauna. I mean, there are sauna companies that'll sell you a sauna, they'll deliver it to your house, you plug it into the wall. I mean, you could have a sauna here tomorrow in this living room. You couldn't have a steam room.
I spent a lot of money on this steam room.
Okay,
but
so
it give me the same.
Did you get the UV, the red lighting?
There's no red lighting.
There's some new gyms that have that.
Can you put a red light in the steam?
You can't put it in the steam. You can put it in the sauna. There's lots of saunas that
Well, that's
have
what I
red
meant
light.
in your sauna. Did you get
I don't have a sauna. I spent all the
Steam
money.
is fine, but the one thing you want to remember about a steam room is when that water line is coming into the steam room, you need to cut that water line and put a water filtration system in there, because or else you're vaporizing chlorine and fluoride gas, microplastics.
So I created a
gas chamber. Because I'll show you tomorrow. If you guys come over, I'll show you in my steam room. It's got the steam unit, but the pipe comes into the wall. I cut it. It goes through a filter. It filters it down to 0.1 micron. So there's no fluoride gas, no chlorine gas, no pharmaceuticals, no microplastics.
Gary, what age will you live to?
Oh, I'm pushing 120 now. I'll show you my glycan age test, my biological age. I'm 54, but I'm on my way to 120. I'm probably going to try to push that to 140.
So I want to know this. There are certain regions on Earth where people just live longer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Mediterranean diet.
Asian cultures, and they live a little longer, 100, 110 years old. What do you think they're doing? Do we know what they're doing to live?
We do know what they're doing.
Okay,
if you look at the blue zones, there's some commonalities, right? And there's some differences. So first of all, it's interesting that there are different diets. Like in Sardinia, they have a very high carbohydrate diet. In the Mediterranean, they have less carbohydrates and high fat, high oils. But one of the interesting links between these blue zones is that Sardinia, for example, it's a high concentration of centenarians, but there's a very small area of Sardinia that has a very high concentration of centenarians. And when you study the only differences there, it was their life expectancy was directly related to the slope, the slope that they walked up and down every day. Actually, as you increase the slope, you increase the life expectancy. You got 95-year-old men and women that are walking up 33-degree slopes, 10 blocks to go to church, 5 blocks over to the market, 5 blocks home, 10 blocks back to their son-in-law's house. They don't have elevators. There's no such thing as assisted care living facilities over there. Assisted care living means mom and dad move back in with their
son and
kids,
daughter,
and son and daughter till the day they die. And the other thing that was very interesting was that they had a sense of purpose. They had a reason to live for the future. And so instead of, these older men and women being put into an old folks home and their only communication is with a nurse that they don't even know and the family doesn't come to visit them, they all had a purpose. They made belts until the day that they died. Maybe the only purpose for grandma was to go out and pick the vegetables for dinner every night, but that's what she did. That was her role. And she went out in that garden and she picked them and she washed them and she brought them in for the family every night for dinner. So it was interesting about how people, when they lose their hope and their focus on the future, how quickly they succumb. You know, we had something called caregiver syndrome or broken heart syndrome in the mortality space. It was very, very real. You show me two people that have married 45, 50 years, 55 years. When one of those spouses dies, is a very short trip to the grave for the other one.
For sure.
Right? It's broken heart syndrome.
Yeah.
Something called caregiver syndrome. When one or another spouse falls ill, what happens is the other one immediately puts himself in the back seat, stops worrying about their sleep, stops worrying about their diet, stops worrying about their exercise, stops taking care of themselves to only care for the spouse, and their health declines rapidly. You know, there's a reason why they say when you're in a commercial aircraft that if it depressurizes,
Put your mask on first.
Put your mask on first.
Yeah.
Now, when you're a mom and you're sitting next to your child, that's not your instinct.
Yeah.
Your instinct is to help the child. But the truth is that you only have a few seconds until you're unconscious. And if you lose consciousness, you're no good to your kid. Mm-hmm. And so they say put the mask on first. And it's a metaphor for life because I think sometimes we've taken self-care as being selfish. But the truth is it's very selfless to give yourself the first 60 to 90 minutes of the day. Give that to yourself. Don't give it to social media. Don't give it to your spouse, your friends, your career, your partners. Don't give it to anyone but yourself. And if you engage in that level of self-care, then everything else becomes easier. But
that's phenomenal. That's unbelievable. Because I think in today's day and age, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody that doesn't wake up and go straight to the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty of that. And I've really tried to actively tried to get out of that and not make that the first thing that I do. But it's really, really tough. But
yeah,
90 minutes is a good amount of time.
Yeah, 60 to 90 minutes. Just say that first 60 to 90 minutes of the day belongs to the day. Because you know the rest of the day doesn't belong to you.
Facts.
It belongs to your problems, your career, your spouse, your friends, your significant, whatever, right? But that first 60 to 90 minutes, just give that to yourself every day. I mean, these are major, simple things that would just majorly change the trajectory of your life. I have a funny little pattern. I'll show it to you guys tomorrow, but I have my bedroom. And I got to go out of my bedroom through the area where the cold plunge is. And then I got to go into the gym. And then I got to pass the red light bed to get to the coffee maker. And it's like, so I've forced
You made it. Like,
I'm like,
right
if
there.
I'm having coffee, I've done myself some good. And that's kind of, it's a funny little game I play with myself. And I use the David Goggins method. He says, don't negotiate with yourself. You can solve anything by massive action. Because every morning I wake up, I brush my teeth and splash water on my face. I go straight in the cold plunge. And every time I walk to the edge of it, I'm like, damn, maybe I should get some coffee. Maybe I should do some breath work first. But
don't negotiate.
Yeah, don't negotiate. He's like, just get it. And I hear his voice saying that to me. And so I brush my teeth, I splash water on my face, I get in that cold plunge, and then the gym is right there. I get on that Hypermax, I breathe that oxygen for 10, 12 minutes. I go down the hall, I get in a red light bed, boom, I have my coffee. And dude, I'm telling you the difference that has made in my life. Just the amount of energy and focus and concentration that I have for the day, is I can tell the days that I don't do it.
I'd love to bring it back to fasting for 1 second.
Sure.
So I've started this thing within my family, and a lot of my friends have adapted it as well. We do fasted Fridays. So for 24 hours every single day of our lives, it's a fasted Friday. So it was a sacrifice that we're doing for God.
Right on.
And growing up, we always did no meat Fridays. So with time, I was just like, there's just something else that we can do. Like, we can take this further. And then I started to see all the things about fasting, and I'm like, okay, God is talking to me. Like, let me put my family on this fasted Friday. But I feel like with just taking that one day, it has changed everybody's perspective on food, and I'm slowly seeing everybody losing weight, because even though we're still eating at the end of the night, it's not like we're not eating, right? We still eat at midnight.
Yeah.
I'm seeing everybody losing the weight, and the relationship with the food is changing. So
That's so good, man.
Yeah, it's totally different.
You know, just to tell you how good that is. I mean, first of all, there's nobody that couldn't fast for 24 hours.
Yep.
Right? I mean, we have enough reserves in our body to make it for 24 hours. That was a normal thing ancestrally. I mean, for us to go without food for 24 hours was actually not a big deal. Mm-hmm. But if you think about what's happening, you fast once a week. Let's say you eat your last meal at 8 o'clock on Saturday night and you don't eat again until or Thursday night, you don't eat again until Friday night, which is, I assume what you're saying, at the same time. So that's 4 days a week, right? I mean, 4 days a month, 12 months a year. That's 48 days a year. That's 6 weeks that you spend not eating. Do you know how amazing that is for your body?
Yeah.
In a year's period, your family will spend 6 weeks not eating food. During that 6 weeks of time, your body is eliminating waste. I'm talking about cellular waste, not stool and urine. Eliminating waste, it's repairing, it's detoxifying, it's regenerating. I mean, the magic that's happening at a cellular level in your body when you don't tax it with food, right? Because if you watch what happens when you eat, right? Remember, your intestinal tract is 30 feet long, okay? So like a 30-foot long tube. And when you pack it with food, especially carbohydrates, high glycemic carbohydrates, what happens is all the blood from the rest of your body diverts to your gut. If I stood you in front of a thermograph, something that reads heat, right, and you hadn't eaten for several hours, you see that your brain glows like bright red and orange. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of heat, there's a lot of oxygen up here. You can think, you're on your game. Now all of a sudden you eat a big bowl of pasta and a little basket of bread. Well, what happens? You see that blood dive to your intestine. And it can't be here and here at the same time. So you got to decide, like, do I want to be sharp and on my game and energetic and hungry? Or do I want to be fed and sluggish and slow, right? And so when you divert that blood to the gut, it leaves the critical thinking areas and other areas of the body. So I think that's amazing what you're doing for your family.
You can relate that to life, too, because you know how when different artists or different athletes, they have this sense of hunger at the beginning, and then as soon as they get all the money, as soon as they get well fed, it just
go away.
It just all goes away slowly. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is amazing.
What do you have to say to the optimists, the naysayers, the critics, those who say Gary's cap, right? Those who say, nah, that ain't it, right? What do you have to say to those people?
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, I'm not a doctor, so I get that comment a lot. I never profess to be a doctor. I don't pretend to be a doctor. I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I learned what I profess to the world from reading medical records for 22 years, from studying mortality, and you can learn a lot about life by studying why people die early. And again, I can take that science to the mat. There is no question that we need to become our own citizen scientist, meaning it is not up to modern medicine or our doctors or the healthcare system to put us in a state of being optimal. That is a choice we got to take to control ourselves. And then secondly, there are simple changes people can make in their life. We talked about $150,000 worth of equipment. You do not need to spend $150,000. Aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. The more aggressively people pursue comfort, the faster they age. We have got to stop this notion that stress is always bad for the body. We got to stop telling grandma not to go outside, it's too hot, not to go outside, it's too cold, just to lay down, just to relax, to eat at the very first pang of hunger. Stress is good for the body. If you don't load a bone, it will not strengthen. If you don't tear a muscle, it will not grow. If you don't challenge the immune system, it will weaken. And so,
Mom, you hear this?
And so, you know, what I think, you know, to the naysayers, for 7 days of your life, add breath work, sunlight, grounding, and a cold shower to your morning routine. Free. Add those 4 things: breath work, sunlight, grounding, and a cold shower. For 1 week of your life, eat whole foods. I don't care if you're a vegetarian, vegan, if you're a carnivore, if you're keto, if you're paleo, eat whole foods. Don't eat anything that your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize. And don't eat anything that's processed or packaged or out of a wrapper. And you just tell me how that 7 days of your life goes. That's it, right? Back to the basics. And then you can go on the journey that I talk about. But a naysayer will tell you that we need chemicals, we need synthetics, we need pharmaceuticals in order to be optimal. I think we need to get back to what God gave us, right? Everything.
Facts. I mean, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I also wanted to ask you too, just like, what is your like mantra to the world? Like when you die in another 100 years, right? What is? I mean, it's facts. You know what I'm saying? When you die in 100 years, what does the tombstone read? Right. I always think about, when I die, what will it say that I done or contributed to the world? Like, what do you feel your message is to everybody?
Wow. I would love for my message to be that I made greater humans out of my kids than I did out of myself. Mm-hmm. I got 3 amazing children. 2 of them work for me full time. They're on this journey with me. That's where a lot of my inspiration comes from, because like when you're a father and you raise a man that's a better man than you are, you start to realize that you made a positive impact on the world. So for me, my message would be about the legacy that I've left to my kids, and they're carrying on the same kind of teaching and legacy that I'm doing. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
I love that.
Nah, that's great for sure.
I get emotional thinking about it. But
Yeah. So Jay,
I think we're good, man. I mean, this was unbelievable. I've like I said earlier, this is something that I've been looking forward to. I'd love to continue to build.
Same.
Let's do this 12-week plan.
Let's do
Is
it.
this 12 weeks? Is this
We're
12
gonna do this, man.
yeah, 12 weeks
Yeah.
though. We're gonna be in Europe in
Well,
12 weeks.
that's perfect.
We're gonna get we'll get the blood and the gene test done tomorrow.
Yeah. Nah,
And
man,
I'll
we
get you
gotta
on the
fly you to
program.
Europe to do
Yeah.
the next interview.
Yeah, I'm down with that. That's all right.
For
in
sure.
Paris somewhere.
It is called On the Road.
On the road.
It is cold on the road.
So you gotta
Yeah,
take
man.
this show on the road.
So very, very thankful to have you, man. Thank you so much for coming by. I'm looking forward to preaching the gospel to the world, and hopefully
Amen.
you guys implement this within your lives, but also share this with the people that you love. Because it's one thing to ingest the information, but share this. Because I feel like this is really, really valuable information that's going to could save a lot of lives and help a lot of people.
Amen. Thank you for having me on, man.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you guys.
Bless up.